This talk was given by Roshi Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is Sunday, October 12th. This is the second day of our 2025 Jataka Sesshin here at the Vermont Zen Center, which I was shocked to discover is our 15th. I guess we're all older than when we started. Today's teisho will be on Roshi Kapleau's favorite Jataka tale, Give It All You Got, which is the second Jataka in the Pali collection of 547 such stories. So I will read from the Hungry Tigress, an older book of mine, Buddhist Myths, Legends, and Jataka Tales. It's the completely revised and expanded edition because that's the only one that includes the section, which was where I interviewed a number of Buddhist notables and teachers some years back for what was their favorite Jataka, and that's what I'll read from Roshi Kapleau's statement on what his was. So we'll start with the story itself, which is rather brief. It goes like this. Long ago, the Buddha was a merchant and traveler. He gathered his goods in one part of India, traded what he had bought, or brought with him rather, than sold the new merchandise that he accumulated elsewhere. In this way, he gained much experience of life, survived many hardships, and learned about the ways of differing peoples, and so became rather wise and gathered wealth. Now, when he was already a gray-bearded man, he was bringing a caravan of goods across a sandy desert. He had 100 ox-drawn carts filled with cloth, spices, and grain. Many men were in his employ at that time, and he had hired in addition a desert pilot to guide them through the vast wasteland. A desert pilot is a man who knows the land and knows the stars. Like a pilot at sea, he navigates by starlight. They must travel at night because the desert is so hot during the day, it's just impossible. So they sleep during the day, then they travel at night with a desert guide, a pilot, who can guide them by the stars to make sure they're heading in the right direction. So because of the terrible heat, as I said, they were resting during the day under awnings, men and oxen alike. Then at night, when it was cool, they'd travel again under the stars. So they traveled some 6 days at this point across the sands and had water and food and wood enough for yet another day or so. But the men and oxen were tired. That night, the pilot, seated in the lead wagon, announced that by morning they would be beyond the desert. Wood, water, food would all again be plentiful. So they unloaded the remaining water jars, the sacks of rice, and the wood they carried for building their cooking fires, and with their loads lightened, set off on the final trek. Now the pilot had been up on constant watch for 6 nights. The excessive heat and glaring light of the day had made sleep difficult for him. And as they neared now their destination, he relaxed and dozed. The wagons rolled on. The oxen marched through the darkness. The stars glittered overhead in the desert air. Men laughed and joked. Just before dawn, the pilot awoke with a start. He glanced at the stars and cried out in alarm. Rather than going straight and true on their course, they'd been veering in a great half circle through the night. They were now farther from the desert's ending than they had been when the sun had gone down. Men and oxen were already terribly thirsty. In an hour, the sun would rise like a ball of fire. The desert would become hot as a blast furnace. They would be consumed by thirst. Their water had all been left behind. "Halt!" cried the pilot. "Stop the wagon, stop!" An open cloth shelter was erected, and they all huddled beneath it, seeking protection from the searing rays of the sun. Then the Bodhisattva, the merchant leader of the caravan, who was no newcomer to danger, stepped out from the shade of the shelter and began to walk along the dunes. He spied what he'd been searching for. A few tufts of grass, just a few, little spindly tufts of grass rising from the sand. "Bring shovels," he called, "quickly." His men hurried forward, shovels and picks in hand. "Dig," he said, "where this grass grows, there must be water. Our lives depend on it. Dig right here." So they dug down into the sands, and they kept going deeper and deeper. The exertion in that heat was terrible. Men gasped and fainted. Many times they thought just to give up and wait for death. But the merchant, the Bodhisattva, stood firmly by them. He dug too, but he kept saying, "I know this is hard, but where grass grows, there is water. Trust me. Do your best." And so they kept digging. At last they had a narrow well pit, some 12 or 15 feet, straight down. And at the bottom of that shaft, the sand was cool and carried a little bit of moisture. So parched and exhausted as they were, they had hope and took turns going down into the well bottom and digging on with a will. But their efforts were doomed to fail. After another foot or two of digging, they hit a great stone blocking their way. There was no way to dig around it. The narrow shaft, already sliding with sand, would collapse if the base were widened any further. In despair, they lay exposed on the hot sands and wept. "Don't give up," said the Bodhisattva merchant. "Tie a rope around me and lower me down into the well." As they lowered him down, loose shifting sand slid and hissed ominously around him. He knelt on the stone and he put his ear down to it. He could hear, like a distant hum, the movement of water just beneath the stone. "Up," he called, "draw me up." The tunnel was treacherous. With every pull, he had to keep from brushing the well sides and causing the whole shaft to collapse in. He came out covered with sand, grim but smiling. "There's water just below that stone," he said. "Get a sledgehammer and bring me the strongest man among you." So a sledgehammer was brought, and a large-framed, big-boned youth was brought. The merchant said, "It's up to you. The stone at the well bottom must be broken. The water is flowing beneath that stone. Rouse your every confidence. You are the strongest among us. Our lives depend on your determination. Take this hammer and break the stone." The youth was lowered down into the well and landed upon the stone. There was hardly room for him to swing the hammer, but he lifted it up and struck the stone a great blow. The stone didn't budge. He tried again and again. It was nerve-wracking work. The water was definitely just below. He could feel the whole stone humming with the force of its flow, but one careless swing and the whole shaft might cave in upon him and bury him. He wiped his brow, again carefully lifted up the hammer, and again brought it down with a great jarring blow. Again he swung, and again. Still, the stone would not break. Couldn't go on. The constant threat of the tunnel's collapse, his thirst and weakness, the solidity of that unyielding stone, the hissing of the sand sliding down the shaft, all conspired to sap his deepest reserves of strength. "Pull me up," he cried. "Get me out. It's hopeless." The merchant stuck his head down into the dry well shaft. The Bodhisattva. "It's difficult," he said. "It's not hopeless. You can do it. The stone will break. Don't give up. If there was ever a time to exert your strength to the limit, this is it. Give it one more shot. And give it all you've got." Heartened, the youth lifted up the hammer and once more swung it with all his heart and strength. The rock split, cracked, and a geyser of cool water shot up. Quickly they hoisted him out of the well as the water shot up, bubbling and dancing out of the hole. The merchant's fortitude and the youth's strength had saved them. After filling their vessels and drinking their fill, they tended to the oxen that made their way safely out of the desert. In that desert, the well bubbles still. Even today, travelers in the wasteland praise the men who left this bounty for them. So that's the Jataka. Let me read you a little note on it. I think this is also the only edition that's got the notes in the back. So I think I rewrote this book 3 times. I think this was the 3rd version. In any case, this is Give It All You Got is the Vanapatha Jataka, number 2 in the Pali collection of 547 such tales. This is an encouraging, straightforward Jataka of perseverance and steadfastness. One can easily see from this Jataka the ease with which these tales have been used in teaching by the Buddha, to whom they're traditionally ascribed, but also by Buddhist teachers, preachers, wandering storytellers, and such ever since. The traditional opening and closing of each Jataka is ascribed to the Buddha and establishes a context in the present for the tale which he tells, which is of the past. The opening for this Jataka essentially goes like this. Once a young monk came before the Buddha and said that he could not go on, that the training was too difficult. I'm like a dry well, world-honored one, he said. I've tried and cannot go on. It's pointless. There's no water down at the bottom of this well. I feel I should quit and return, still unenlightened, to my home. The Buddha replied, this is not the first time you and I have spoken in this way. What you did in an earlier birth, you can do again now. Let me tell you an old story, and the version of its closing after he tells this story of the merchant that he was in a past life and the young monk who was the young man who went down in the well. Now, long ago, said the Buddha, ages past, you were that youth, strong, but without full confidence in your own strength. And I was the merchant who encouraged you to go on and try once more to split this rock. Son, he added, the rock of ego is hard to crack, but you can do it. Give it one more shot, and give it all you've got. And the young monk, heartened, returned to his practice with new vigor and achieved a very thorough breakthrough into truth. So that's the Jataka tale. Now let me read you Roshi Kaplow's reasons for liking this story. They're quite personal. So he said, there are many Jataka tales that move me deeply. However, for personal reasons, my own life experience and Zen training, the Jataka which I've seen titled, Give It All You've Got, strikes the deepest chord. In that tale, a caravan leader strengthens the courage of a young man who's down at the bottom of a dry well digging for water. If he fails, they will all die. The rock at the bottom of the well must be broken, but so far it has resisted all efforts. It's a claustrophobic moment. The sand is trickling down, the well shaft threatening to collapse. The youth feels he cannot go on. The caravan leader reassures him that the water is there. Be calm and steady, he says. Give it one more shot, and give it all you've got. The youth rouses his energy, tries again, and this time breaks through to life-saving water. Though simple in plot, direct and unadorned, the story has powerful implications. That determination and persistence are the 2 indispensable ingredients for success in any endeavor. For me, that relates especially to Zen training. My Zen teacher, Harada Roshi, added another element, conviction. When a Zen aspirant is convinced he can awaken, gender language, he, she, they can awaken to their true self, he would say that conviction will generate strong determination and strong determination results in a persistent, all-out effort. Given this mind state, the aspirant can no more miss becoming enlightened than he or she can miss the ground with a stamp of the foot. Roshi Kapleau then goes on. The story reinforces this, as well as pointing to the indispensable aid that spiritual friends, one's teacher and sangha, can offer. In Zen, a teacher is not thought of as a guru, but a kalyana mitra, which means spiritual friend, simply someone who's gone further down the road, and so could advise us as to what lies ahead, and can see if we're about to fall off a cliff or get tangled up in barbed wire, point that out before we end up doing it. Then Roshi Kapleau adds, in my own training in Japan, I often felt very much like that youth in the Jataka tale. When at last my breakthrough was confirmed, I remembered the words on a postcard which my friend Tongan Roshi had once sent me. And this is what Tongan Roshi had written. Sometimes even in the driest hole, one can find water. It was the spur I needed, and my gratitude to him is boundless. In this Jataka, I found that such experiences have been part of the Buddhist tradition from the beginningless beginning, and my gratitude arises once more. So that was very personal for Roshi Kapleau, and indeed he did get that sometimes in the driest hole, one can find water, the very point of this Jataka. So I'll also share some years ago, one of the first times, I think, or maybe the only time we did this Jataka before, Sunyata Roshi sent me this response to this Jataka. Marshal Ferdinand Falk, World War I commander. This was her response to the Jataka. My center is giving way. My right is in retreat. Situation excellent, I shall attack. So, a little commentary on this. Zen practice, Bodhisattva practice, is not isolationism or a way of closing ourselves off from the needs of countless other living beings, the planet, our families, our culture, our times. Though embodying our aspiration requires periods of sesshin, of retreat, so we can give full attention to the practice, nothing left over, the result is more present, more fulfilling living. Dogen says that when we push the self forward to become one with the 10,000 things, it is called delusion. But when we allow the 10,000 things to step in and confirm the self, it is called realization or intimacy. Someone just emailed me, someone who's I've been working with out of town by Zoom on koan practice. He had worked with other teachers and was kind of rechecking on certain things. And he said the last Doksan, it was very simple, very really simple, a clear answer, but something shifted for him. And he wrote me about feeling intimate with things in a way that he'd never had before. It wasn't conceptual. And it was like so interesting to see how the practice opens us to these moments of real intimacy, selfless. And the world steps in, and we find our identity is much larger. The world of the 10 directions will be your entire body, stepping from the top of the 100-foot pole. To let even a cup in, a blade of grass in, can be revelatory. When the Buddha glanced up, the morning star stepped in, and the rest is merely history. A central point. In the Blackhound Jataka, the Bodhisattva didn't just respond, he creatively gave his all to the situation. The Bodhisattva does that here too, but in a lower octave, in a simpler, more ordinary, less mythic, less dramatic way. Here he's a competent human being, still maturing, simply doing his best, fully giving his all. As a guide and caravan leader, he made an honest mistake, Trusting his knowledgeable pilot, he's put the caravan at risk. Now it's up to him to save them all. How? First, he accepts responsibility and looks directly at the problem, seeing what can be done. Once you understand a problem, the solution can get clearer. As with a successful play or business venture, good casting or a good team remains essential, as does good coaching, good leadership, good directing. Once the Bodhisattva has brought everyone together to dig the needed hole, and once he's personally gone down into it to see where their salvation is blocked, he then directs the appropriate person to take the last step. And when that person's effort stalls, he offers the right, true, honest, heartfelt encouragement that's needed. The difficulty is real. In time, the spirit weakens, faith fades, strength falters. Yet, one more step, one more effort, and the water of life may flow. Isn't this true? One more step. A quote from Saint-Exupéry, the aviator and writer I've mentioned many times, would not be amiss to recall. What saves a man, we'll use person, make it less gender fixed. What saves a person is to take a step, then another step. It is always the same step, but you have to take it. That's the difference. You have to take it. Knowing it won't do it. You must do it. You must actually take the step. Over and over. No sitting back with, oh, I know all about that, or, oh, I already did that. Because of the difficulty, the Bodhisattva must step up, draw on his skills, and dig deeper into himself. Perhaps deeper than he's ever gone before. He's further developing his skills because of the difficulty. Difficulty can be opportunity. Again, to quote the Baal Shem Tov, the bad is the throne of the good. The good sits on the throne of the bad. The so-called bad is how we find out what we're made of, what we're capable of. The failure is, again, wonderful indeed. The Bodhisattva will need these skills, the skills of guide and caravan leader and encouraging teacher in the future, when, as the awakened Buddha, he stands up from beneath the Bodhi tree and starts teaching others the good road, the ancient way he's uncovered. He will also know then and for sure that full life is hidden under a stone, and that stone can break. So he can encourage us and all beings, reminding us that while every effort so far may seem to have not yet been enough, if we give it another shot with all we've got, in time it will happen. The hammer wielder may be exhausted. He or she or they may think, I can't. We've all been there, as Roshi Kapleau points out. D.H. Lawrence, in a poem, a lengthier poem, The Song of a Man Who Has Come Through, interesting title, The Song of a Man Who Has Come Through, wrote, if only I am keen and hard like the sheer tip of a wedge driven by invisible blows, the rock will split. We shall come at the wonder. We shall find the Hesperides. The Hesperides in Greek mythology is where the apples of eternal life grow. If only I am keen and hard like the sheer tip of a wedge driven by invisible blows, the rock will split. We shall come at the wonder. We shall find the Hesperides. In this tale, the Bodhisattva wastes no time in recriminations or in finger-pointing. He could make excuses. It looked good. We were in the clear. Everyone was tired. I thought I'd make it easier for you. He could blame the pilot. How could I know the pilot would fall asleep? Instead, he starts off owning it, facing, not evading, the reality. We know then that we can trust him. He doesn't think, if I ignore it or suppress what's happened or blame the pilot, my personal problem, my shame and embarrassment will go away. There are people who do such things. And so the problem never gets faced or resolved. The Bodhisattva will not take that road. He's a grown-up. He searches, and upon finding tiny signs of life, a few spindly blades of dry grass, determines the path forward, what can and must be done if they mean to live. That's the point. If they mean to live, to face the situation as it is and not give up by strength of character, experience, and leadership skills. He gets the entire caravan together to pitch in and not give way to despair. He doesn't delegate, but goes down into the dangerous well himself to see what's going on. And once he sees and understands that the solution requires a courageous physical response, he picks out the strongest man to swing the hammer. And when the one gifted with vigor and physical strength falters, with spirited words, he strengthens his mind, rousing faith in himself, what he needs to make the final self-transcending effort that will save them all. There is truthful teaching in this. One person's effort can and does positively affect many, many others, even as the efforts of others affects us. But so too, our own efforts affect many, many, countless others. The success is shared. The full giving of the Bodhisattva, expressed in his skills as leader and guide, makes the success of the whole thing possible. Inner strength is as important as physical strength. Both were needed here. It was a team effort. But the Bodhisattva is not Superman. He observes, leads, accepts responsibility, he encourages. His attention, confidence, faith, experience, and clarity make a difference. He offers us a model of human maturity and shows us how to deal with our own errors and weaknesses. To turn this Jataka to specific use in Sesshin, it reminds us not to foolishly toss away the resources of the past day of focused practice and start marking time. It reminds us to keep working, never giving up. Despite weaknesses and mistakes, deeper, less self-centered practice is possible. Right now, it is possible. No matter how long we've been at it, or how tired we may from time to time become, there is more we can realize, more we can actualize. Our aim is the water of life. And this means not just a glimpse, but full enlightenment, nothing else. This is no easy goal. Yet at some point, to push the metaphor further, everyone hits a desert, a place without a drop of water or blade of grass, a dry realm without sustenance. To cross it, we need to keep going, one breath, one step after another, doggedly, relentlessly. And then the desert blossoms. Case 10 of Gateless Barrier tells us that a monk, Qing Shui by name, said to Sao Shan, "I'm poor and alone. I beg you, master, please give me alms." Sao Shan said, "Venerable Shui." Qing Shui said, "Yes, sir." Sao Shan said, "You've already drunk 3 cups of the finest wine in China, and still you say you've not moistened your lips." Aiken Roshi would encourage himself, saying, "Not enough of it yet, not yet enough. He was practicing fully, as do we in returning again and again, divinely discontent to the count, the breath, the koan, the inquiry. To think I've got it flattens the road. Who really knows what lies ahead? Who knows what's possible? Reason can't tell us. It can only extrapolate from what's already been. If we keep going, what lies ahead, while simple, ordinary, deeply familiar, is also going to be astonishing, revelatory, life-affirming, life-changing. As Hakuin said, Buddhism is like the ocean. The further you go into it, the deeper it gets. It's like a mountain. The more you climb it, the higher it gets. And there is the whole issue of the water of life. Shengen, would be Kyogen, Japanese, wrote, last year's poverty was not true poverty. Last year there was room for a gimlet to make a hole. This year I can't even find the gimlet. In short, last year, last Doksan, last Sesshin, I thought I had it. But this year, this Doksan, this Sesshin, I see that even that was rather shallow. Not yet complete, not as great as I thought. The road does go on. Sincerity is key, which means sincerely practice, sincerely do the best we can. Shakyamuni himself is still only halfway there. But there's no need to get overwrought or self-consciously start pushing. This breath, this count, this koan is fresh and new. We take it up and let the past with its successes and failures go. But if we falter, if we lose heart, if we start wandering in samsara's desert, start thinking I can't, which doesn't mean when exhausted we shouldn't go to sleep. Tomorrow is a new day and a new effort. Or if we get caught up in the endless forms of congratulatory good enoughs, or I've got this, or the self-pitying sorrows of I don't have this, then as the Jataka shows, we can encourage ourselves and start up fresh with another sincere effort. Again and again. We reboot our vows. Remember that time waits for no one. We take a breath and let it out. We splash cold water on our face, wrists, and neck. We sit before Kanon and open ourselves to deep, silent encouragement. We're each only here, not just in Sesshin, but in this life for a very brief time. Life passes like a dream. Now this sounds like a cliche, but when you get to be my age, you find out it's not. The clock never stops ticking. Tick, tick, tick. And there is something that we're here to actually do, that we've been born to do. There is a profound mystery for us to solve. Who am I? What am I? Who sees color with the eyes? Who hears sounds with the ears? Who thinks? Who understands? There is always another stone to break up and crumble to bits, crumble to dust. In the simple Jataka, the second one in the Pali collection of 547 such past life tales, the Buddha, in telling this story of his own innocent past era and his efforts in the face of it, has chosen to remind us how to live. We all make mistakes. Maybe as a caravan leader responsible for others, he should have been more cautious and not followed the pilot's reasonable advice. A bit more caution might have made a big difference. Maybe that was something he had yet to learn. To toss away precious wood and water and travel with a lighter load, to make things easier, might have seemed like a good idea, a godsend even. Men and oxen were tired, and this relief would be much appreciated. So it was not an unthoughtful decision. The welfare of the caravan was a deciding factor. But time would prove that it had not been wise. We assume he's not going to make that mistake again. Roshi Kapleau used to say that no sincere effort is ever wasted. As long as we continue, as long as we keep going, we will find that it has actually been, whatever it was, necessary to our maturing. It is how we uncover our innate strength and our wisdom. The Buddha, too, made mistakes. And there's the telling point that the result of his failure is his own maturing skill and this teaching of showing us how to face our own rough situations. When we too come to the end of our road, we will remember the words of the Bodhisattva in this Jataka, and drawing on his firm advice, we'll give it one more shot with all we've got. A Zen verse I've always loved says, when your bow is broken and your last arrow spent, then shoot. Shoot with your whole heart. When your bow is broken and your last arrow spent, then shoot. Shoot with your whole heart. When we've got nothing left, we may find our greatest opportunity. People have done remarkably selfless things in extremis, in times of disaster or war. Time and again, ordinary people have risen to the absolute heights of courage and selflessness when the chips are down. Something fundamental at the core of being, beyond distinctions of race, gender, class, personality, even species, often then emerges. As thoughts of self and limitations vanish, a realm of noble action opens. Aiken Roshi marveled that his father, a tall, thin, and not particularly strong man, once lifted a car up with his bare hands to free someone trapped beneath the wheels. An impossible feat which he could never reduplicate when he tried. Dogs, cats, porpoises, orcas, humpback whales, elephants, and yes, rats, have all stepped beyond self-concern to act for the benefit of others, even those not of their own species. In less extreme form, Japanese Zen priest poet Ryokan, dates 1758 to 1831, cut holes in his roof so a bamboo plant could continue to grow. And he removed the lice from his robes before doing a wash, then replaced the lice before putting his freshly cleaned robes back on. A sense of limitless freedom, of joy in life itself that opens at such moments, seems to underlie the draw of extreme sports. Life lived at the edge of a knife demands our full attention. There's nothing left over for self-centered habits of mind. Giving it all we've got, we come alive. That's the secret sauce. At such times, there's no room left for such trivial habits of mind as me, myself, and I. At such times, our usually self-referential thinking only puts us in danger. Clinging to life is how we lose life. And yet, sadly, perhaps until we come to some decisive turning point, this is where we spend most of our days, locked in a prison of our own making, trapped in what Blake called our mind-forged manacles. An introductory koan wisely challenges us to get out of a locked dungeon. Blake famously wrote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite, for man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern." If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite, for man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. It's from The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. Yet, long before formal practice begins, we all of us, each one of us has had moments or glimpses of something more. Here's a personal anecdote. I was on my high school fencing team. Once when my team faced a better trained team from another school, I looked at my opponent and saw that he was not only well trained, but bigger and stronger. This was a bad news moment. I felt hopeless. Yet somehow, as I stood on guard, and this is a true story, foil in hand, ready to begin, my normal shyness and self-concern fell away. When the signal fence was given, I leapt forward and 1, 2, 3, one after the other, made 3 valid touches, and before I even knew that it had happened or how it happened, I had decisively won. The coach was astonished. My team broke into cheers. I had no idea how I'd done it. Had I done it? What had happened? This raised some real questions for me, among which were, what might it be like to live like that? Outside the dungeon of all my self-centered thoughts. That moment became part of the precondition that drew me to Zen, or is part of what enabled Zen and my own ancient vows to hunt me down. Here's another personal incident. This is some 10 years ago or so. I was riding a motorcycle on a 6-lane highway several hours south of Rochester. The sky turned black and rain and hail began pouring down so heavily I couldn't see 10 feet in front of me. Cars, and this is like a 6-lane highway, so people are going 75, 80 miles an hour. So was I. Cars began pulling off onto the shoulder, for even with wipers going full blast, they couldn't see the road at all. And then lightning began. If I tried to pull over and stop on a motorcycle, a car could plow right into me. They wouldn't see me. Or I could slide and hydroplane. And even if I did safely stop, I'd be sitting on a metal motorcycle in lightning. I began screaming, "Canon! Canon! Canon!" in my helmet. A single intervening thought of myself, a moment's inattention to what actually was, and I could lose my life. Miraculously, still screaming, I came to an exit ramp, and at its bottom found a gas station where I was able to wait out the worst of the storm. Purposely seeking extreme experiences so we can forget ourselves and experience what, for lack of a better word, we might call oneness or less self-centeredness, would not be a great idea. Purposely seeking out starving tigers, desert wastes, lost caravans, or terrible storms to ride motorcycles in is an unhealthy sort of practice. Still, we understand the impulse. Zen practice is a better path. It helps us get to the heart of it while doing ordinary things like standing in line at the post office, answering the phone, washing dishes, talking with a friend. An ex-motorcycle racer who discovered I was a writer confided in me. He said, "You know, it's not about the motorcycle. It's a spiritual thing." And I knew what he meant. Riding required that you give your all to this moment, becoming so present. There is just the sky, the road, the river, the trees. All are usually tedious self-involvement, simply gone. That's what motorcycling was really about. You have to pay attention or you're literally quickly up the creek. Sadly, most people who ride do not have a practice. So all they can do is get back on a bike and ride again. They can't live it. It has no function in their life except as a memory. Ongoing Zen practice, while not extreme, is more total and more real. Giving our all doesn't mean huffing and puffing or forcing a thing. Giving our attention over to the practice again and again, self-centeredness eventually fades, becomes background, transparent. Gradually, we forget to cling to or return to the unconscious habits of self-concern which imprison and isolate us. Dogen wrote, to practice the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to awaken to all things, or all things awaken. And this self-forgotten practice, or actually is to forget the self is to forget others as well. Self and other forgotten, the self-forgotten practice continues endlessly. It's not that you're done with practice, it's that the practice now continues endlessly. We don't need the pressure of terrifying or dangerous circumstances. We can give our all to this breath, this lifting of the spoon, the stretching of our legs, the sound of the bell. In short, to this never to be repeated moment of life, just as it is. The water of life is where we are. Taking our attention off of our habitual unconscious narrative of me, myself, and I, and giving it to this count, this breath, this koan, we become intimate with the play of sunlight on the wooden floor, the barking dog, the touch of water flowing over our hands when we turn the tap. Ongoing practice is simply what we were born to do, to breathe, to be present, to taste our food, to rest when tired, to hear sounds, to inquire deeply into the nature of our own mind. The great mystery is here. Who am I? Who sees, hears, tastes, thinks, feels? What is this consciousness I take so for granted? Right now, the mystery, the great meaning and opportunity of life is exposed with this breath, this count, this inquiry, this koan. Giving all we've got is the morning star, the flowing stream, the stars at night. It is the waxing and waning moon, falling leaves in autumn, grass pushing up between cracks in the sidewalk come spring, as it is snow whirling down in winter. With practice, we rejoin the ancient community. We who had been so desperate, lost in a desert, parched by foolishness, find ourselves revived and refreshed. Heike Kanroku K17, a monk once asked Shenglin Kyorin, what is the meaning of the patriarchs coming from the West? What's the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? Shenglin Kyorin said, sitting long and getting tired. Sitting long and getting tired. Of course, you could sit on a mat forever and still not get it. And getting tired isn't the point. That would be like thinking the point of the young man's effort in the Jataka was to keep hitting the stone until he was exhausted. What's Shanglin getting at? It seems a far cry from going down into a dangerous pit with a sledgehammer to shatter a boulder, though at times our ordinary practice might feel like that. Mm-hmm. The great Zhao Chu once answered this question about the coming of the Buddha Dharma, that is, of Bodhidharma, the patriarch, question about the coming of the patriarch Bodhidharma, which is a Zen shorthand for what's the highest teaching of the Buddha Dharma. When we're asked what's the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West, the question really is, what was so important that he risked his life to come to China from India? What's the highest teaching? What did he bring? He answered, the oak tree in the front garden. This too is a matter of giving all we've got. Yamada Koan, later to be Yamada Roshi, wrote to his teacher Sowa Nakagawa Roshi after a deep enlightenment, which began opening when he was riding on a train with his wife reading his Zen book. And he wrote, that American, that is Philip Kaplow, was asking us whether it was possible for him to attain enlightenment in 1 week of Sesshin. Tell him this for me. Don't say days, weeks, years, or even lifetimes. Don't say millions or billions of kalpas. Tell him to vow To attain enlightenment, they would take the infinite, the boundless, the incalculable future. Tell them to vow to attain enlightenment. They would take the infinite, the boundless, the incalculable future. Right now, just as we are, we take up the practice once again and wholeheartedly give it all we've got, absorbing ourselves as best we presently can, wholeheartedly as we presently can, in this breath, this koan or koan point, letting thoughts come, go, and returning again and again to the practice. We're like a person at the end of a rope, swinging a sledgehammer with all their might, their courage and faith, knowing that they're in a tough spot, but that not just their own life, but the lives of others depends on them. Zen Master Dogen said that the sustained exertion of the Bodhisattva way, while in fact not something we naturally love, it was nonetheless the last refuge of all. This giving of all we've got is the last refuge of all. Keeping at it will not only find the water of life, but in time become so drenched we can joyfully share it with others who, like ourselves, have also been on the edge of dying of an ancient, unslaked thirst. And this is it. Give it another shot. All you've got. We'll stop here.